Before the coming of humanity, other extraterrestrial societies were at that point investigating the remainder of the universe. On the planet's Mrs. Plants is watching his girl naval force mess about near the ocean. While he makes sense of for his significant other the entire year that he's acknowledged a long-term investigation work. Normally he truly does short runs, however this time he believes the additional cash should pay for a therapy for naval force in disorder. Then Factories shows Navian how to whistle with her hands before at last examining the subject of his excursion with her to in a little while. Plants is the pilot responsible for a boat that conveys a group in cryogenic rest. At some point, the boat experiences startling shooting star movement and gets hit on various occasions by lumps of shooting star. As the boat starts falling apart, Plants hurries to the cockpit and conveys a crisis message while directing the boat to arrive on the closest planet. The boat winds up separating into parts, and as Plants watches the inescapable accident he ponders his girl prior to falling oblivious. Minutes after the fact, Plants awakens to hear the PC express they're in an obscure area. He finds he has a piece of metal stuck on his stomach, so he horrendously eliminates it to then close up the injury. Then, he gets into his space explorer suit and starts examining the boat to decide the harm, finding the cryo chamber is compromised. Subsequent to snatching a laser firearm in the event, Factories leaves the boat and strolls into a pool of water where a strange animal swims around him. He likewise tracks down every one of the assortments of his group and is crushed to see not a single one of them made do. In the wake of actually looking at the entire boat for harm and understanding the getaway case is on the other, around 50% of that landed elsewhere. Plant sends another SOS message expressing he's on unfamiliar region. Feeling stuck and sad, Factories snatches his firearm determined to end things, yet recollections of Navian prevent him from making it happen. Then, at that point, Factories assembles every one of the tapes with the messages Navian has been sending him just to hear her voice once more. Unexpectedly, the PC identifies a functioning container close by. Plants races to examine in a shock to find Traveler Koa is as yet alive inside, so he quickly takes her out. Returning to the boat, Plants sees a gigantic paw print on the ground, which uncovers this planet is Earth quite a while back. Importance: Factories is encircled by dinosaurs. The team comes to the boat when dusks and Plant goes through the late evening longing for Navian, requesting to know where he is. The following morning, not entirely settled to escape just to save the young lady. He utilizes the boat's PC to find the other portion of the vessel, however the sweep can't find it. Subsequently, Plants goes outside to investigate the region and finds gigantic bones that demonstrate how risky the nearby hunters are. He's likewise inadvertently hit by a hot fountain impact which he never saw. When he recuperates, he sees something sparkling somewhere far off and understands the other boat half is on a far mountain. A fast sweep affirms it, and when Plant starts to consider what way to take, he out of nowhere gone after by a little dinosaur. After some battle with an animal, Factories pushes it to the ground and hits it with his weapon until it's dead. There are more commotions coming from the forest, and when Factories goes to explore, he finds Koa has left the boat. The young lady starts running when she sees him, and Factories pursues her until the two of them tumble down an edge where they track down a major yet dead dinosaur. Abruptly the tree begins shaking and Plant sees a considerably greater animal drawing closer, so he snatches Koa and hauls her back to the boat. While he deals with the injuries she got when she fell, he attempts to make sense of the circumstance, yet it turns out they don't communicate in a similar language and the boat's interpreter isn't working. To come to his meaningful conclusion, Factory spreads a red powder on a tablet and draws the mountain with a unit to make sense of they should arrive to get away. Koa goes along with him and draws her folks as she grasps the word family, so to stay composed, Factories lies and says her family is in the mountain. To a short time later, Plant conveys another SOS message saying he's tracked down a survivor, while Koa tracks down the accounts of naval force. As she watches them all, it's uncovered that during the principal year of voyaging, naval force's sickness deteriorated and she must be shipped off the clinic. During the initial not many months, her messages were cheerful and glad for her father. However, as time elapsed, she ended up being irate with him since he wasn't there for her. At the point when Factories finds Koa watching the tapes, he promptly switches them off and declares they're leaving. When he has an adequate number of provisions in his sack, Factories and Koa start strolling through the wild, trying to keep calm not to draw in hunters. It's a long and difficult excursion. Yet, every time Plants helps Koa when she falls or needs anything, they become somewhat nearer. One evening Koa sees something shining red overhead, yet she doesn't remark on it. In the long run, Koa becomes exhausted of all the strolling and gets berries from a shrubbery to toss at Plants just to irritate him. Irritated, Plants utilizes his output to demonstrate the berries are harmful and orders Koa not to screw with them. Afterward, a tremendous bug lands on Mel's neck, and when he kills it with his hand, his fingers end up shrouded in a revolting tacky substance. Plants attempts to dismiss it on a tree, however the thing is solid to the point that he falls with a piece of bark adhered to his hand, which makes Koa snicker. To prod her back. Plants attempts to contact her with his messy hand, however their little game is intruded on when a little tree falls before them. There are a few unusual commotions digging out from a deficit the edge, and the duel finds a little dinosaur trapped in a pit of a tacky substance. Koa feels awful for itself and rushes to help it out, which Plants believes is excessively risky. Since she will not tune in, Plants winds up assisting her with completing quicker. The little animal leaves when it's free, however a couple of steps later, gone after by a gathering of hunters rapidly kill it. Plants hauls Koa into a concealing spot so she doesn't need to watch her companion being eaten up, however she can determine what's happening and cries after the dinosaurs are no more. The pair proceeds with their process, coming by a cascade to wash and fill their water bottle. Factories is stressed over the condition of his stomach, twisted, yet watching Koa makes him consider naval force and no more. Motivation to make all the difference for them. Koa discovers a few pretty blossoms and irritates Plants until he gives her put one access his hair. Minutes after the fact, Plant's scanner loses the area of the mountain, so he chooses to ascend a tree for a superior view and sweep the region once more. Unexpectedly he tracks down a bug on his hand and shakes his arm to get it off, however the development makes the branch break and Factories falls, separating his arm. While Koa assists Plants with pushing his arm against a tree to attempt to establish it back. A gathering of dinosaurs hears the clamor and starts drawing closer. To speed things up, Plants makes Koa step on his arm for that last push. Also, now that he's better, he quickly snatches the weapon to take shots at the animals. He likewise tells Koa to run, and when she's sufficiently far, Plants initiates a couple of little bombs that rapidly disposes of half of the dinosaurs. The survivors keep on bouncing on Plants and he shoots them individually. In the meantime, a lot of flying dinos lands close to Koa, so she starts creeping away to take cover behind a tree. Tragically, the monsters from before view as her, and when they are going to hop on her, Plant appears and kills them all. In any case, there's one concealing that out of nowhere hops on Koa from behind and hauls her away with its tail. Processes rapidly pursues them and frightens the animal off with a shot. Presently Koa is too frightened to even consider proceeding or even be close to him. This Factory plunks down and persistently gives her some space. While it's beginning to get dim, Plants chooses to whistle like he used to accomplish for naval force to attempt to quiet Koa down. The stunt works and CO answers with her family's own technique for whistling, at long last tolerating to continue onward. After loads of strolling, COA out of nowhere occupies him by uncovering she's carried one of Navy's tapes with her. And keeping in mind that Factories at first is furious, then, at that point, he plays the tape in light of the fact that Naveen carries solace to the two of them. While Plants attempts to rest. He can't quit pondering the day all you reached him to let him know Navian had passed on in the emergency clinic, which makes him cry. Later in the night, Factories is awakened by the sensors advance notice him of approaching risk. At the point when he keeps an eye on Kola, he finds a bug has entered her mouth and he promptly utilizes a device to kill it, passing on Kola to hack out all the remaining parts. Then, at that point, the sensors start going off the deep end, and at that point, a tremendous dinosaur shows up external the cavern. Plant gives it 2 or multiple times before he and COA go through a little opening at the rear of the cavern. The team quickly starts searching for a way out, ignorant that a more modest dinosaur is following them. After heaps of strolling and going through tight spaces, the team is upset to find they've arrived at an impasse. Factories tracks down a little space between 2 shakes and attempts to dig to make it greater, yet following a couple of hours, he's scarcely gained any headway and chooses to surrender. At the point when Cohen sees she ends up being enraged and requests to attempt once more as she continues to say family. So Factories attempts to tell her they're dead, yet she can't figure out him. Feeling that he needs appropriate devices, Processes out of nowhere gets a thought. He utilizes a couple of bombs to make the opening large enough for a youngster, then, at that point, provides Kola with the other bombs to be protected while she investigates. Koa slithers through the limited opening and affirms there's sufficient space on the opposite side, so Plants attempts to follow her. Tragically, the opening unexpectedly implodes and Processes frantically hollers in disappointment when he loses contact with Koa. At that point, Plants hears the dinosaur moving toward this. He gets his firearm and gets back to the past cavern where he utilizes his scanner to know where the dinosaur is. At the point when the animal attempts to go after him from behind, Plants expects it and starts shooting it. However, the dinosaur hits him and makes him drop the firearm. Then, at that point, the monster snatches Plants and nibbles his arm, yet Factories wards it off until he figures out how to arrive at his scanner and initiates a shrieking sound that harms the dinosaur's ears. With the creature diverted, Factories recovers his weapon and kills it. In the interim, Koa makes it outside. She investigates the woods alone and finds a gigantic bone that she can use as a weapon, so she wraps it up with noxious berries and a major leaf prior to taking care of it clinched. Minutes after the fact, Plants figures out how to leave the cavern, and when he sees that an enormous shooting star is drawing nearer, he utilizes his scanner to discover that the shooting star he saw before had just been a messed up piece of a greater one that will hit in a couple of hours, setting off a horrendous elimination occasion. He promptly goes searching for Koa and hears her shout when a dinosaur moves toward her. Koa races to conceal inside a tree trunk while Plants runs toward her. Yet, he outings and falls solidly into a pit of a sand trap. He attempts to call for Koa, yet he gradually sinks until he can talk no more. Clings Plant's call, so she assembles her boldness and trusts that the dinosaur will enter the tree trunk to toss the bombs at it prior to running. With the monsters dead, Koa can securely arrive at the sand trap and twist around a tree to assist Plants with emerging from the pit. The duel reunites with a warm embrace, and afterward Plants clarifies the shooting star for Koa to go through the last couple of miles. At night, the double at last comes to the foundation of the mountain. Factories ties some rope around Koa and she fires, moving up first. Then, at that point, she sagaciously ties the rope in an exceptionally complex strategy for getting around trees and shakes so it'll stand. Factories stand by as he scales too. Minutes after the fact, they find the other portion of the boat and Plants quickly turns on the PC to affirm there's a salvage vessel coming for them. Koa goes searching for her family and at last finds all the obliterated cryo tanks, so she gets enraged with Plants for the untruth. As she cries, Plants takes out an image of naval force and makes sense of he lost his little girl while he was on a task, meaning now he can't permit that to reoccur. A crying Koa embraces Factories as he is sorry for everything. Out of nowhere, the more modest bits of shooting star start falling on the planet. So Processes and Koa hurry to get inside the crisis unit. Obscure speaker 956 when Plants is going to press the send-off button. A piece of shooting star stirs things up around town and makes the unit tumble down the mountain, taking the couple out simultaneously. Koa awakens first and rapidly presses the send-off button, yet the PC makes sense of it can't send off here. As Plant starts awakening to, a gigantic dinosaur shows up and starts going after the unit. Since the firearm fell on the ground, Factories needs to gamble with passing on the case to recover it, just to find it doesn't work. While the subsequent dinosaur joins the assault. Factories rushes to take cover behind a piece of the boat and fixes the weapon setup. The dinosaur out of nowhere encompasses him. So Koa snatches the naval force tape and put it on the scanner to make a 3D image of naval force now outside the boat. Mel's cries since he believes he's getting to see his little girl one final time before his demise. Yet, it turns out the dinosaurs are deceived and assault the multi-dimensional image first. Utilizing this interruption, Plants emerges and rapidly kills the primary animal while Different pushes the boat attempting to arrive at Koa. Processes quickly comes after it too, and after a couple of very much landed shots. This dinosaur bites the dust also. Because of the animal's push, the unit is presently well positioned to send off. Before Factories can return, however, the monster that he had shot back in the cavern returns and starts pursuing him. In light of an arrangement, Factories races to the springs and makes the dinosaur stroll into a hot impact of water that hits its face. Tragically, it doesn't cause a lot of harm, however. At that point, Koa appears and wounds the dinosaur in the eye with a bone she arranged before. The dinosaur begins thrashing and strolls on top of another spring. This time the impact hits it on the stomach and effectively consumes it to death. A short time later, Factories and Koa got back to the case and figured out how to take off just before the shooting star hits Earth, setting off the eradication of dinosaurs. At the point when the case leaves the environment, the autopilot guides it to the gathering point where salvage vessel will be hanging tight for them. Since they're returning home, Plants shuts his eyes and imagines he would rejoin with naval force, and soon So Cool holds his hand to comfort him. Make a point to subscribe and turn on notices so you can observe more recordings like this. Gratitude for watching.